Welcome to True Echo, where real stories resonate louder than fiction. Today we bring you a tale that will shake your soul, warm your heart, and make you believe in the power of sacrifice. It's about one man's quiet devotion, two daughters with sky-high dreams, and a comeback 25 years in the making that no one in a small southern town ever saw coming. This isn't just about flying planes. It's about what it means to give up everything for love, and what happens when that love takes flight. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see your own story. My name is Ariel Holloway. I'm 30 years old, and if you're holding your breath wondering whether this story has a happy ending, you're not alone. But before I tell you how we circled back home in two jets that shook a town's memory loose, you need to understand where we started. Or more importantly, who we started with. My father, Ezekiel Zeke Holloway, wasn't the kind of man who raised his voice. He raised furniture, tables, beds, rocking chairs, and he raised two girls, me and my twin sister Amira, with more love than most people manage in 10 lifetimes. He wasn't rich. In fact, by most standards he barely scraped by. But what he had was enough. And when it wasn't, he found a way to stretch it further. He ran Holloway's Woodworks, a little shop on Jefferson Street in Moss Point, Mississippi. It smelled like lemon oil, dust, and hope. There were no fancy machines, no employees, just my daddy, a beat-up gospel radio, and the kind of calloused hands that knew how to turn splinters into art. And in between planing cedar and sanding oak, he raised us. After our mom died in a car crash when we were just kids, Daddy didn't cry in front of us. He cried into the same spot on the corner of a cabinet until it glowed like it had a soul. Then he picked himself up, made us eggs the next morning and said, "You girls still got growing to do." And that was that. We didn't know what sacrifice looked like when we were young. We just knew that new shoes didn't come around often, but fresh biscuits did. That the lights might flicker sometimes, but the porch light, the one we used to trace airplanes under, always came on. And we knew our dreams, even the wildest ones, were never too big for Daddy to carry. "Daddy, I want to fly planes," I said one day, swinging my legs off his workbench. "Me too." Amira chimed in from the back, glue smudged on her face. He didn't laugh. He didn't joke. He just nodded and said, "Then we're gonna figure it out." But figuring it out meant more than saving. It meant sacrifice. When that acceptance letter from Daytona came with the fine print about tuition not being the only cost, housing, flight hours, textbooks, Daddy walked into his shop, looked around one last time and gave it all up. He signed over the deed to a stranger with a firm handshake and eyes that didn't care. "You sure?" the man asked. "Got daughters to send to the sky," Daddy said. And that was it. No drama. No spotlight. Just a quiet exit from the place that held his life's work. We didn't even know until the day we left. He walked us to the Greyhound station like he always did on school trips, except this time, his hands were empty. No toolbox. No mug of coffee. Just two envelopes, one for me, one for Amira. Inside, a photo of the shop from the front steps. On the back, 5 words written in blocky, steady print. "Keep building. Just higher up." We cried the whole bus ride to Florida, Amira and I. Not because we were scared, we were. Not because we were excited, we were that too. But because we finally understood what Daddy had done. That man had sold his past so we could chase our future. And if we failed, it wouldn't just be us falling. It would be like watching his life's work crumble for nothing. That fear? It sat heavy. But so did the fire. Daytona was everything Moss Point wasn't: loud, humid, buzzing with ambition. Our secondhand luggage and thrift store coats didn't belong on that glossy campus. We walked past shiny dorms and kids with parents who wore Rolexes, who talked about networking and legacy admissions. Meanwhile, we were girls with calloused hands and one photo of our daddy taped inside the closet door. We didn't complain. We didn't party. We worked. Amira flew like she had a debt to collect from the sky. Instructors called her the Hammer, not because she was reckless but because she was relentless. Every simulation, every loop, every emergency drill, she pushed harder. She even told one kid, "My daddy didn't sell his dream so I could coast through yours." Me. I was the planner. I read manuals until my eyes burned. I memorized every checklist, diagram, airspeed limit, and protocol like it was scripture. I'd stay in the flight lab long after everyone left, watching aircraft data on replay like I could will myself into mastery. There were nights when dinner was ramen split between us. Days when we skipped meals just to stretch Daddy's money far enough to afford another hour in the sky. But every time we felt tired, broke, or doubtful, we looked at that picture of the shop. And we remembered the man who gave up everything so we could build higher. Our classmates never knew the full story. To them, we were just the whole sisters. Some of them sneered. Others smiled politely but kept their distance. Didn't matter. We didn't come to impress them. We came for one reason: to fly. When Amira passed her private pilot check ride, she ran out of the testing building, found a quiet corner, and called Daddy. "Daddy," she whispered. I flew. He didn't say much, he never did, but I swear we could hear his heart swell through the phone. "I knew you would," he said. 3 months later, I called with the same news. His reaction. The same calm strength that had built us from the ground up. "Good. Now keep going." So we did. We earned our instrument ratings, our commercial licenses. We flew nights, worked weekends, skipped breaks. Every dollar went back into flight hours. By 24, we were flying regional jets. By 28, Amira made history as the youngest black woman to captain a commercial flight out of Dallas Love Field. They put us in magazines, news segments. They called us pioneers. But the only headline we ever cared about was the one we imagined in our heads: Zeke Holloway's girls made it. Every check we got, we wired a little back to Daddy. He always tried to refuse. "Y'all ain't supposed to be paying me back," he'd say. "I didn't do it for that." "We know," I'd say. "But we're doing it anyway." It wasn't about guilt. It was about gratitude. You don't build your life on someone else's sacrifice without trying to repay it in stone. But we wanted more than that. We wanted to give someone else what we'd been given, a fighting chance. And we knew exactly where to start. It took years to save, more to plan. We kept flying, but every layover, every night off, every spare minute went into something bigger than us. And then, right before Daddy's 70th birthday, we made the call. 2 jets. One small runway in Mississippi. And a town that had no idea what was about to happen. It was just past noon when the sound rolled in over Moss Point like distant thunder. Zeke Holloway was sitting on his porch, same spot he'd sat in every morning for decades, with the same dented mug of black coffee balanced on the arm of his rocking chair. The sun was soft that day, the breeze tugging gently at the edges of his flannel shirt. Everything was still, until it wasn't. The first jet streaked across the sky, low enough to rattle windows and send birds scattering. The second followed close behind, engines roaring like an echo off the past. Zeke's hand trembled slightly as he stood, shielding his eyes with a calloused palm. He didn't need to ask. He knew. By the time he made it to the edge of town, the rumors had already started. Was that the Air Force? Nah, private planes. You think that was the Holloway girls? They flew jets in here? It wasn't until both planes touched down on the cracked tarmac of the local airstrip, engines hissing into silence, that anyone believed it for sure. Out of the first stepped Amira. Her captain's uniform was pressed crisp, aviator shades tucked into her breast pocket. Ariel followed, quiet, focused, wearing the same proud fire in her eyes that had once lit up Overwood glue and crooked birdhouses. Zeke didn't move at first. He just stood there, feet planted on worn gravel, heart thudding like a plane engine in his chest. His daughters walked straight to him. No reporters, no speech, just presence. And that was louder than anything else. "Happy birthday, Daddy," Amira said softly. Ariel reached into her jacket and pulled out a set of rolled blueprints tied with a red ribbon. "We got something for you." Zeke took them with hands that had once taught those same girls how to hold a plane steady in sand with the grain. He unrolled the blueprints slowly, eyes scanning every inch until they landed on 4 bold words, carved above the illustrated entrance of a new building. Holloway Flight Center. His breath caught. Not because of the building. Not because of the surprise. But because of what it meant. "We bought back the land," Ariel said. "Right where your shop used to be. We got investors. Supporters. A whole team," Amira added, smiling. "We're building a flight school, Daddy. For girls like us. For kids like we were. For dreamers." Zeke didn't answer right away. He just kept his fingers on the paper like it was carved from the oak he once worked with. "Y'all, really?" Amira nodded. "This is your legacy, Daddy. Not just what you gave up, but what you built." That was the moment he broke. Not quietly, not secretly like he used to do behind a workshop cabinet. This time he cried openly, the kind of tears that belonged to something sacred. The crowd around them went silent. Some people clapped. Some just stood there stunned. That day Moss Point saw more than jets. It saw a promise come full circle. 1 week later, construction began. The ground broke on a Saturday morning under skies so clear it felt like even the heavens were watching. Zeke stood at the edge of the old lot where Holloway's Woodworks used to be, now stripped down to dirt and promise. He wore his best shirt, the one Rel bought him the year before she passed, and a pair of boots he had resold 3 times. The first dig came not from a machine but from Amira. She didn't wait for ceremony, she planted the shovel deep, turned the earth with practiced arms and smiled through tears. "We're building, Daddy. Just like you taught us." The press came. So did the neighbors. Kids from all over the county lined up behind orange tape, pointing at the renderings on display. Classrooms. Simulators. A flight hangar big enough to house 3 twin props. And at the very top of every plan, etched like scripture, was a line in bold. "In honor of Ezekiel Holloway who taught us to build." Zeke didn't say much during the speeches. He stood beside his girls, hands clasped behind his back, nodding now and then like he was taking mental notes on how they framed the scaffolding. And in truth he was. Every morning after, Zeke walked the construction site with his clipboard and coffee, just like he used to walk the shop floor. He gave advice, corrected angles, called out potential creaks before the doors were even hung. "That brace is gonna warp come winter," he warned one carpenter. The man blinked. Sir?" Zeke pointed without flinching. "You hang it like that and you'll be back fixing it before March." The crew didn't argue. They fixed it. He wasn't in charge. But everyone listened. As the walls rose and the roof came on, Amira and Ariel spent nights finalizing staff lists, reaching out to flight instructors and building curriculum. They kept their jobs flying commercial but took every spare day off to be home. They stayed in the old house out back, floorboards still creaky, screen door still slapping shut with that familiar clap. And at night, when the work lights shut off and the last hammer stopped ringing, the 3 of them would sit on the porch like always, watching stars blink alive. "You see that one?" Zeke said one night, pointing with his mug. Ariel squinted. "That's probably a 737 headed to Atlanta." Amira leaned her head on his shoulder. "I think it's just a reminder." "Of what?" "That you don't need wings to make people fly." The opening ceremony was set for late March. A ribbon cutting, a speech, and a new beginning. But before the day came, Amira and Ariel made one more change, one that Zeke didn't know about. They had salvaged a single item from the ruins of the old workshop, the bench Zeke had carved the summer they learned to read. It had sat near the door, a resting place for tired backs and quiet talks. Now it stood in the center of the new Holloway Flight Center lobby. The plaque read, "To the builder who saw wings before we knew we could fly." The morning of the ribbon cutting felt like something sacred. Sunlight bounced off the fresh glass windows of the Holloway Flight Center, and the scent of new paint and sawdust mixed with spring breeze as the town gathered. Students came dressed in tiny bomber jackets. Local teachers brought their classes. News vans parked crooked along the gravel shoulder near the airstrip. Even the mayor showed up in a tie that looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. Zeke Holloway stood at the front, hands tucked neatly behind his back, wearing the same old hat Rochelle had bought him at the county fair before the twins were born. His slacks were pressed, his shirt clean, but nothing fancy. He never needed fancy. He needed real. And this was real. Amira took the mic first. The crowd quieted, waiting. But she didn't read from a script. She never did. She told a story. "When I was 12, she began, "I built a birdhouse so crooked it leaned like it had a bad attitude. I was ready to throw it out." A chuckle from the crowd. But Daddy didn't say a word. He picked it up, turned it sideways, nailed it to the tree and said, "Some birds like a view." Laughter. Applause. Even Zeke smiled, his thumb brushing the edge of his belt like he did when trying to fight back emotion. Then Ariel stepped forward. "We've flown over oceans, cities, mountain ranges. We've trained in the best simulators, studied under some of the most experienced captains in aviation. But the most important runway we ever had was a wooden floor in a creaky old shop on Jefferson Street." Zeke's eyes welled, but he didn't break. Not yet. Amira and Ariel stood at either end of the red ribbon stretched across the front steps of the center. In the middle, they placed the scissors in Zeke's hands. His fingers trembled slightly, not from weakness but from weight, the kind of weight you carry when everything you gave up finally comes back to you in a form you never expected. He looked at the building, at the crowd, at his daughters. Then he cut the ribbon. The cheer that followed was thunderous, more than applause. It was release. It was history shaking loose from the bones of a town that once told him dreams like his girls didn't belong here. As people flooded the entrance, touring classrooms and gawking at simulators, Zeke slipped into the lobby and sat on the bench made with his own hands. He ran his fingers over the plaque. "To the builder who saw wings before we knew we could fly." He didn't cry. Not then. He just sat, breathing in everything around him, the hum of new machines, the echo of little feet, the distant murmur of laughter, and he smiled. Later that afternoon, a young girl in pink sneakers approached him. She couldn't have been more than 9. She stared up at him with wide eyes. "Are you the builder man?" she asked. Zeke nodded, adjusting his cap. "I want to fly too," she said. "Then you will," he answered softly, voice thick. "And I'll be here to watch you take off." That night, after the crowd cleared, after the press packed up and the sun dipped low over Jefferson Street, the porch light on the Holloway house flicked on for the 1000th time. Zeke, Amira, and Ariel sat side by side in the quiet, just like they used to when they were kids, tracing blinking aircraft overhead, trying to guess the model before it disappeared behind a cloud. But this time there were no guesses. No blinking lights. Just the hush of a small town tucking itself in, and the whisper of a story coming full circle. "You didn't know me this," Zeke said quietly, staring off into the dark. Amira leaned her head against his shoulder, her pilot's badge catching the light. "We didn't do it because we owed you, Daddy. We did it because you gave us the kind of start most people never get." Ariel nodded. "You showed us how to build, and you let us decide what to build for." They sat like that for a while, no words, no need for any. Just the sound of crickets and old memories lingering in the creak of the swing beneath them. Zeke reached down, his hand brushing a small groove in the porch rail, a mark from when Amira had dropped her hammer there during her first birdhouse attempt. It was still there. Still visible. Still part of the wood. Just like her. Just like both of them. "I used to think," Zeke said after a pause, "that what I made with my hands was the best I'd ever do." He looked at the 2 women beside him, grown now, powerful and poised and still his little girls. "But turns out, my greatest work wasn't timber. It was love." Amira took his hand and squeezed it. "You didn't just build with your hands, Daddy. You built with your heart." "And patience," Ariel added with a sly smile. "A lot of patience." He chuckled, low and warm. "Well, somebody had to keep y'all from sawing your thumbs off." They laughed, and the porch settled into silence again. Only this time it wasn't heavy or aching, it was peace. The kind that sinks into your bones and reminds you that you've done something right. That something lasting came from your labor, even if it didn't bear your name on the front door. Across the street, a little boy rode his bike in lazy loops under the streetlight, occasionally glancing toward the flight center. And inside the building's tall glass windows, the simulator lights blinked softly, waiting for the next day's dreamers. Zeke watched them all. And for the first time in decades, he felt what he hadn't let himself feel since Rochelle passed. Complete. The Holloway Flight Center didn't just change Moss Point, it rewrote its future. Within months of opening, applications flooded in from across the state. Girls and boys who never imagined the sky could belong to them now had a doorway wide enough for their dreams. The simulators buzzed from sunup to sundown. And every new student passed beneath the carved entrance that bore Zeke's name. But the most surprising thing? Zeke stayed part of it all. Not just as a name or a legend, but as a presence. He became a fixture on campus. His slow stride, clipboard in hand, checking bench heights, cabinet hinges, and sometimes just dropping in to remind kids to stand tall. "If you're gonna fly," he'd say, "stand like you mean it." And they listened. They all did. Because to them, Zeke wasn't just the founder's father. He was a symbol. Of grit. Of grace. Of what it means to build without ever expecting applause. He still lived in the same old house behind the lot, though the porch swing had been reinforced, not because it broke, because so many kids came by to sit and hear him tell stories, it started to sag from use. Amira and Ariel split their time between commercial flights and the school. But when they were home, you'd still find them barefoot on that same porch, laughing over old memories, updating Zeke on student progress, or just sitting together in silence. Then, one spring morning, almost a year to the day after the ribbon cutting, the Holloway Flight Center got a call from Washington, D.C. The Department of Aviation wanted to honor the school as a national model. They wanted Zeke to attend. But he declined the flight. "I've seen all I need to," he said. "Y'all go. Just bring me back a brochure." They laughed, but they understood. Zeke wasn't built for stages or cameras. He was built for homes and hearts. He didn't need a spotlight. His legacy lived in every cockpit his daughters commanded, in every takeoff by a student who once doubted they belonged up there. The last photo ever taken of Zeke, before his knees gave out for good and the cold Mississippi nights started getting to his lungs, was taken from behind. It showed him sitting alone on that porch, coffee in hand, staring toward the airstrip as a student pilot lifted off into the morning fog. His silhouette looked small. But the caption underneath, published later in the national story, said everything. He didn't raise pilots. He raised believers. Big difference. That line echoed across the country, shared on social media, in news features, in classrooms where students dreamed of reaching beyond what anyone thought they could do. When Zeke passed, the entire town shut down for the service. Former students flew in from every state. His casket was carried not in a hearse, but in a small trailer built from wood salvaged from the original shop, carried by hand from the flight center to the church, the same church whose pews he once built himself. Amira and Ariel spoke last. "We've flown at 30,000 feet across oceans through storms," Ariel said, her voice firm, eyes bright with tears. "But the hardest journey we ever took was walking away from him that first day. And the best," Amira added, "was flying back." After the service, the girls didn't just continue the school, they expanded it. New wings. New programs. Scholarships in Zeke's name. And every new student who walked through those doors was handed a card on day one. On it were 5 simple words. Keep building. Just higher up. This is the story of Zeke Holloway. A carpenter who gave up everything, not for fame, not for credit, but for a future he couldn't even see yet. His love built more than furniture. It built a launch pad. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone who sacrificed so you could rise, share it. Tell the world their name. Because love like Zeke's? It echoes beyond generations. Subscribe to True Echo for more stories that remind us. The smallest hands can build the tallest legacies. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build into someone else.